So you guys know how there's this epidemic of kids who are born into families that are broken or families that eventually end up broken, primarily from father's side. Like, say, I am a child who is the product of a divorce that was taking place, in a sense. Like, my parents tried to reconcile, it just didn't work out. So by the time I was born, my father was out of the picture, but my parents were still on paper married, but like the process of the separation and everything was going on. I was technically born by myself. It was like mom, her doctor, and then I can't remember who she said was there. I think one friend of hers was also there, but I hate that I forgot. I have to ask her. But basically, when I was born, I was pretty much not celebrated quite as big as my brother was, because when my brother arrived, it's like everything was fine, the marriage was going, whatever. This was like, from what I understand, my brother was born not too long after they got married. And that's something that my dad wasn't wild about, because he wanted to enjoy the marriage, and he felt maybe from his past failed experience with his first wife. Shit, was he even married to my eldest brother's mom? I don't know. I frankly don't care. But I know that my eldest brother's mom was not a great mom. We just have to call it what it is. She didn't have a lot of domestic skills, no maternal skills, things like that. Unfortunately, that showed. And one of the things that used to piss my dad off about that woman was that he's a man with this career, policeman and shit, and he comes home to be expected to take care of himself, as opposed to this woman staying at home taking care of the kid and taking care of domestic duties and taking care of the man too. Like, I think his shifts used to be, they had to be like 12 hours or so. After a 12-hour shift, the last thing you're thinking about is having to come home when you're supposed to be supported and have to, take care of that. And sometimes they would go grocery shopping and food would go bad on them because she would never prepare things, that type of thing. So, like, I get it. My dad's not really at fault there, but I do feel like a career like that doesn't really aid the cause either, because if you got involved with this woman who is lacking in that department and now you have a kid, it's evident that it's going to have to cost you something now, because you made the decision to have this child. I'm not saying that you said, all right, I'm going to get laid tonight and I'm going to try to become a dad from this. Like, I'm not putting it like that. I'm saying that you made this decision of engaging in activities that had the potential for that consequence. That consequence is here, so it's gonna have to cost you something. Time, career, money, resources, availability, shit like that. That is the commitment problem that my father always had, and that eventually would be even further exposed when he was married to my mom, and my mom is someone who did not have commitment problems, quite the opposite. After that, when I was born, that showed even more. Like, the fact that I'm his child and I'm being born and he's not there, that's an example of a commitment problem. But on top of that, it also doesn't help that he, without any reason whatsoever, any reason outside of him being easy to influence based on what other people say, and him deciding to believe more the people who were telling him those things, because the power of friends outside of relationships and stuff, I guess, dominates some of you men, because you spend more time outside the house than more time at the house actually getting to know who the hell you're with. That eventually just showed in its entirety when I was born. And quite honestly, there's a side of me that's like, I'm kind of glad that I was born under those circumstances, because I'm trying to imagine with those issues already existing and then there being more familial presence, I think I would have been born more stressed than I was born already, than the stress I was born with already. Shit like that just makes me wonder, Why is it so hard for people to make the pertinent commitments and changes that you gotta make in order to make your family really function and work? Every time I say things like that in which I'm living in constant criticism, like if you examine my channel, the vast majority of my channel is about that. It's about me having tendencies of just criticizing the things that I think hurt people and how it hurts people. And if it doesn't immediately show the symptoms of that hurt on the person committing it, I can describe how it may be affecting those around them. And I think that maybe that is the whole point of my existence in a sense, because when I started describing what my experience was like as a daddyless kid, some of the folks who were listening to me saying that, which were only like 3 people in my life that I can think of, because this is not something I really like to put out there, but I find that the older I get, I feel a sense of responsibility of describing these things because maybe I can serve as a voice for those people who just don't know how to express themselves or simply can't, because this can be a burden that is hard to break yourself from. So I like to describe my experience as, you know what? It sucked. And it sucked more because as a kid, I was oblivious to the fact that my circumstances were hurting me, but how much they were going to hurt the more time passed. When I was a kid, fortunately, my mom was able to be a good provider because she happened to have had a career. She had a career that she wasn't rich by any extent of the imagination, but it was one that, at least by the standards of the day, it paid decently. It was teaching. And on top of that, she was able to apply for assistance. So I was definitely a WIC baby. I was a food stamps baby and all that good stuff. And that's stuff that I'm grateful for because at least financially, I didn't have to worry myself too much about where food was going to come from or mom's ability to keep the shelter over us. And on top of that, my father also had a court order to pay child support. So I'm a benefits kid, you could call it. And maybe that's why I have those tendencies of being really upset when I feel like prices are unfair and not justified, because I come from that a life that could be defined as one of struggle. But fortunately, mom had great organization skills, especially financially. Somehow, she always had money set aside for things in general. And fortunately, in addition to that, she also happened to meet people over the years who she became good friends with. And then she was able to count on some folks as resourceful. And some of those folks, ironically, would come from my father's side, who it's people that my mom met because she knew him, and therefore they decided that, you know, my dad was fucked up in the situation that both of them experienced. And then they said, you know what? Well, I'm gonna try to support your ex-wife because, I mean, she has 2 of your kids and you're not very present, whatever. So basically, the price that my father had to pay for him to have his career and end up retiring at, did he retire at 55 or 56? I forget how old he was, but he's been retired for a little bit now. And I'm like, my mom is like 5 years older than him, 4 or 5 years older than him, and she's still not retired. And if that doesn't show you what I have been saying about the cost of responsibly bringing up kids, I don't know what will. One of the things I was saying about my circumstances as a daddyless kid, I started saying not even that long ago, it was maybe around 5 years ago. I said, I really resent the fact that my father went on to, I'm pretty sure that if he didn't mismanage it, he should be pretty good now, but he went on to have money and saved and had retirement right there guaranteed that he could indulge in. And I know that the policeman career is a risky one and whatnot, but I'm like, That's not the point. I'm not talking about the risk of your career costing you your life or something like that. I'm talking about the cost that your career had on your personal life. I am a part of your personal life. I am a part of your personal life, but I never belonged to that personal life. That's what I'm saying. You chose your career over me, over family. You chose the filthy money and the filthy status that it would give you in the future over me. You were evidently not a person who was relationship material. Why couldn't you just recognize that? Just be like, you know what? I really shouldn't get married. I really shouldn't mess with women that I'm not going to be responsible with or for if something happens on that kids department and stuff like that. I just hate that. People who have a zero sense of paternity. And I'm just gonna focus on fathers now because my dad is the one who like screwed things up in my life. You lack a paternal instinct, no paternal investment, just nothing. And I guess because you were living your life as a rushed person, like, oh, I gotta go to the academy, I gotta go to my shifts, this and that. And on top of that, you surrounded yourself with people who were influencing you, and you became susceptible to being influenced by these people because you spent a lot of time with these people. When would you actually sit down and think on your own, using the power of your brain? Say, to give a comparison, when did you ever sit down, like me, alone with your thoughts and unscripted, not influenced in any way, just be like, what the fuck are my thoughts? Who am I? What am I? Who am I with? Why am I with them? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Where am I lacking? Where am I under delivering? Where am I delivering? I cannot imagine my dad way back in those days actually having sat down to think critically, think with meaning. And I say that because, like I've said before, after the shit shifts that he used to come from, I don't imagine that man is trying to get too deep into something, especially something that feels like he's been criticized for or examined for. Like, well, Dad, all right, you're a great policeman, whatever, but the house is neglected and this is how. We need your presence on some matters and this is why. And that man would have gotten offended and be a continuous short fuse because on top of that, the type of career he has, he's supposed to be the voice of authority. Have you ever met a person who's like in a management position or a power position, authority position, things like that? And those are the worst people to talk to because they either hear you without listening intently or nothing just goes through them. Even if you're telling them something extremely sensible, like, hey, here's $100, don't spend 150 because that's gonna put us on the negatives. It's like, no, I'm saying as the authority figure, we're spending the 150 regardless. Even if very sensically speaking, you shouldn't spend the 150 because that's gonna put you on the negatives. That kind of dynamic. So there's that part of me that's like, I understand that it was ultimately better for me for my dad to not be at home because I can already see him saying no to me for a lot of things because that's the kind of person he really was at the time. I can imagine just being like, hey, can I go play outside? And then mom is like, sure. And then he's like, nah, because you're a girl, or shit like that. Very antiquated ways of thinking. And then as I got older, fortunately, I was not the kind of kid who wanted much anyway. But there's a side of me that wonders, would I have been this person who's not very consumeristic without my dad there? Or had we been able to count on income support from him, would I have been more of a spoiled kid? I'm not sure. I don't know how to predict that because I cannot imagine my dad giving more of his money to mom, especially since mom had her own salary going on. And even when he was paying child support, he tried going to court to pay less child support, even though he could perfectly afford me. Like the little last payment he was paying me. So I think that's the reason mom had to go to court again. I hope I'm not misremembering. But of course, mom totally won that. I think the case was totally dismissed. But I think my dad tried that because he was operating under someone else's influence. Maybe the influence of someone he was dating. Something like, why are you paying that woman? Blah, blah, blah. I'm not sure. I hope I'm not misremembering, but I think that was the case. So, see what I mean? Like, here's this person with authority being easily manipulated for some things, but for the things that I feel are good, not. And then there's that part of me that's like, well, fortunately, that was a very long time ago. I'm sure that my dad has improved and changed from some of those things. But the one thing he never got better at was being present in my life. Because last year, we were supposed to have done something, but what did he do? He ended up canceling on me, and he said that we would reschedule and things and that he would stay in touch. He didn't stay in touch. We haven't rescheduled. We still haven't hung out. So I go my entire childhood with him being absent, but also I can feel the resentment he has that I even exist, because to him I'm a nuisance. I am a bill. He only showed up once or twice for my graduations, say when elementary school was over. When was he there? When middle school was over for me? I don't have a memory of that. I don't think so. And then for my high school graduation, and that was it, really. Like, I could go years and years and years and years without seeing him or really talking to him outside of a holiday greeting. And that was it. And there's the side of me that's like, well, now that I'm older, maybe I could take the responsibility of serving as my own bridge to go to him, since I am older and slightly more resourceful now and stuff, and be like, well, my brother had a fair relationship with him, and not really anymore from what I've heard, but they shared things in common, career wise, being pilots and stuff. I would imagine that's something that helped them bond and stuff. But then there's that part of me that's like, I don't have that instinct though. I don't have that instinct to go look for my parent when my parent rejected me the entirety of my life. Even though he wasn't like on my face, just pushing me away, going like, no, Zam, get off me, or anything like that, his absence to me screams rejection. So there's that part of me that's like, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to, I guess, get over that. And I cannot imagine a life in which I actually go out there and look for him and make the first move on him, because the one time that I tried, he got really defensive. I got questions. You guys know me. I like to ask questions that are actually meaningful. I was like, so, what's going on? What's happening? Why is it that stuff turned out the way that it did? He would remain really superficial, and that tells me that there's a lack of interest and stuff. And I'm like, look, the point is not for me to roast you and drag you and judge you for the stuff from before. But the truth is that I don't know you and you don't know me. So just understand, coming from me, that indeed what you did, the decisions you made, had consequences on me. Why are you afraid of hearing the consequences that had on me? I have never been able to tell him anything about what it was like to be a daddyless kid. And I'm not sure he's prepared for that. I'm not sure he cares to hear that. Or maybe someone else may have told him, or maybe I doubt that he would have curiously looked up the consequences of being absent in your kid's life. But maybe my dad is better than I think, but because I don't know him, I can't give him the proper credit. I don't know, but if he would have done something like that, like if he would have met a resource that expressed these things to him, I doubt that he wouldn't have become brave to find me and be like, hey, so I'm interested in fixing some things, whatever you want to phrase that as. So yeah, you guys, what is the point of me saying this? Nothing really. This, I don't think, is something I haven't said before, but with that said, there's that side of me that wonders, how will I feel if I ever find out that he's like gone or something? My issues with him are evidently unresolved, but with me personally, I think that more than having an actual relationship with him, I just want to make sure that I understand my story of why things turned out the way they turned out. Because, of course, there's stuff going on both sides, like with my mom, of course, with him. But I'm saying you gotta do your due diligence as well. And I feel like I have done some of mine, but I have gone as far as I felt was fair without knowing or hearing from him his story. And I think that the way it would be helpful for me and important for me is to understand how those things happen for the sake of recognizing where I'm at, what my situation is, and especially how to avoid it, but also how to get out of it. Because this is a household that lacked investment, and the investment is very evident where it came from. It was just a home that was managed by one adult when two adults were needed. So, like, I get that part, but I just want to, I guess, feel more connected with that area of me that I sometimes don't know how to explain with actual facts. And a lot of the things that I have to express myself on are more about my feelings and the conclusions that I can arrive at that led to that. Like, say, if I have low self esteem issues, this is where that possibly came from, and this is why I'm saying that's probably where it came from. It's a lot of speculative kinds of thoughts as opposed to, all right, guys, let me tell you the story of my origin, starting now. This is where I come from and how I came to be and stuff like that. Yeah, it's questions that I think are good to know. Whether it paints your parent in like a really negative light or something, I don't care. I want to know it, hear it, feel it, understand it, so that way I know exactly how things happened, because all I see around me is the consequences of that lack of management, but I don't know the true origin of that lack of management. So, from that, it's very easy to live a life feeling guilty about things that you know you had not a damn thing to do with. I just thought I would put this out there as kind of a slightly different angle to that. And originally, this was going to be a completely different topic. I can do that topic separate